sing a song about generosity, charity, benevolence, altruism, kindness, goodness, 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 goodness.
Now to politics. President Biden lands the endorsement of a major union today. He won the backing of the United Auto Workers at its political convention in Washington. The union has roughly 380,000 members. Back in the fall, the president joined UAW members while they were on strike. It's believed to be the first time a sitting president has visited a picket line. The president also won the union's endorsement in 2020.
Working people are going to get their fair share. You've earned it. You fought for it, and you deserve it. So today I want to say to all of you, thank you, thank you. I could not be more proud or more honored.
The UAW president criticized former President Trump, Sean Fain, saying Mr. Trump did not travel to Detroit when the union was on strike in 2019. Fain also said Trump talked about moving auto jobs to southern states where the pay is lower.
The good is always pays great dividends.
We'll bring those to you live when he takes the stage. First, joining us now, the co-host of the hit show The Five in America's Newsroom. She's got double duty. I was on with her today, Dana Perino, along with our fellow co-host of The Five, Harold Ford Jr.
I work for Dana, so I'm glad to be here with you.
The crowd favorite. Right
by the way, I cannot fill in for Greg Gutfeld. I'm not as funny as Greg. I'm not as funny as Jimmy Fallon either.
You're taller than Greg, though.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's always an upside.
But he's
Great.
taller than me, so.
Well, you're both great. All right, let's get you just simple analysis. What happened today?
One of the things I love about our coverage is that you have these people out there talking so that any viewer can tune in and see like a real live focus group. What's really on people's minds? We can talk about the polls all we want. I thought it was very interesting that how many people are bringing up education. They're bringing up these back to basic issues. Gutfeld talked about that today on The Five as well. That they just want government to work well. They're not asking for government to solve their problems. Okay, they want to pay their taxes and make sure that the roads are taken care of, that the schools are taken care of, and that their national security is taken care of. And they don't want the government to get in the way of the economy being able to work in a supply and demand, market forces kind of way. That's the way that I see this. I also think that President Trump, if you look at that screenshot right now, his stage presence, one, we know is very good, right? The charisma, the politics, but the experience of having been president and then now running again. Now, he didn't debate, but he has been here in Iowa. He has shown up. He's going to give some remarks tonight. And he goes into this with a strong gust of wind at his back. And it shows in that kind of a scene right there. That's a good advance team.
Yeah. Harold Ford Jr., when we first met, you were a congressman from the great state of Tennessee. You now live in New York, and I believe New York City, and you pay about 13% income tax.
No need to remind me.
Yeah, we know.
Now, if you were in Tennessee, you would pay zero. An amazing disparity in terms of political philosophy. I thought that I tried to highlight that when Governor DeSantis debated Gavin Newsom. There is a divide. I don't know how we reconcile on issues of the economy, on foreign policy, on immigration, on energy. I don't even see any middle ground anymore. As a Democrat, as you look at this, what's going on from your perspective?
Well, first, thanks for having me on. I agree with Dana. I think when you chime in to Sarah and others and you listen to people, you were commenting while she was there that these are just bread and butter things. I think to Greg's point on the show today, our politics is broken. And when the politics is broken, everything that stems from it, our borders broken, our schools are broken, our workplaces are broken in many ways. Even our places of worship are broken. So when you look at those things, millions of Americans' lives are in disrepair and are broken. If you're a Democrat tonight, I think if you don't extrapolate so much from an Iowa Republican coalition or caucus, then what you do extrapolate from is what everyday people are saying. You had parents in that diner. You had people who were a little older, people were a little younger. Then that last guy who I thought was so interesting said, we just want it to work. It can't, to your point, Dana, we don't need you to solve everything, but you can't pass a budget on time. Staring in your face as a porous border, no one can come together to work on that. We're finding ourselves engaged in fights overseas in Ukraine and helping our friends, the Israelis. Let's get government back to working again. And whichever candidate is able to do that, be it Joe Biden or Donald Trump, looks they will be our nominees. And this is going to be the longest race we've ever seen for president. This thing will probably get started March 1st at the latest. We all know who they are. It's not like something's going to come up on Tuesday and Wednesday about Trump or Biden. So we may get a race.
I believe that there's some grand scheme to get Biden off the ticket, or is he one big fall away from being off the ticket?
I know no one's wishing that, but I know your point.
Not wishing it. I'm saying.
But if they're the two, we may find ourselves with one of the great substantive issue-based debates that we've seen in a while, because they're going to have to, one's been president already and one's president now, so they can talk about their records, not what they would do, but what they did and what they would do going forward. And I think the country, as much as 3/4 of the country don't want either of them as a nominee, if you look at the polling data, if they are the nominees, I always try to look at things in the most favorable light. In the most favorable light in this census, they may have to talk about issues in ways that other candidates may not.
I've got to ask you the question that I ask everybody, every Democrat that comes on the show. Do you really believe that Joe Biden is physically strong enough, cognitively strong enough to be the president? Because I do not believe that.
He's been president for 4 years. The answer to your question is yes. Am I in a box of people wouldn't mind seeing another person, another Democrat emerge? That may happen at some point. And if you look at the polling data for the country, 2 out of 3 Democrats want that to be the case. But I think even 3 out of 4 Republicans want someone different. But we may be stuck with these two. We've got to figure out what's the best that can come out of this for the country.
So if you look at the Fox exit polls, we've been running polls for 7 days straight. You look at the ABC poll, Joe Biden at 33%. He is losing dramatic support among every key major demographic of the Democratic Party or the Democratic base. If those numbers if 20% of those numbers hold, that would be a landslide victory if it's Trump versus Biden this year. How real do you believe that is in the end, Dana?
Very, and also in that same ABC poll, they asked a question about cognitive abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 28%. Yeah. Right? And I disagree. I don't think you'll have the most substantive campaign, because President Biden has already said his campaign is going to be against MAGA extremists and against Donald Trump as a person. And you might see that from the other side as well, that Trump is going to wonder what Biden would actually do in the future if he could do anything at all.
But I think we'll tire of that debate. Think about this. But the economy is always, if we find ourselves at Memorial Day and gas prices are really high, that impacts adversely an incumbent. And if the incumbent has that, he's going to have to figure out, how am I going to get these prices lower? If things are lower and the economy is improving, it's going to be incumbent upon, if it's Donald Trump.
In 22, raid the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which he did on purpose for politics.
But he's not going to change the border. And so if all the people still come around the border.
I've got to go to hammer at the big.
I agree with you. I agree with Dana 100%.
I'll tell you the whole Joe Biden campaign. It's going to be the normal playbook. Republicans are racist, sexist.
Hitler.
They have every phobia. Hitler. Okay. Democracy in peril. Donald Trump, January 6th. That's it.
That won't work.
About his record.
That won't work alone. You're going to have to talk about the border and the economy. And if you don't talk about those...
How does he talk about the border without being laughed at?
Well, you got to get, between now and March, they got to get down there and do something about it. I've been saying this for a long time. If we don't do something there, it's bad for the country and worse for my party.
Love watching you guys every day. Thank you both for joining
us. Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it. All right.
I'm proud to stand up here with your International Executive Board and announce that the UAW is endorsing Joe Biden for President of the United States.
In a fiery speech Wednesday in Washington, United Auto Workers Union President Shawn Fain endorsed Democratic U.S. President Joe Biden's re-election bid and delivered harsh criticism of Republican former President Donald Trump.
Instead of talking trash about our union, Joe Biden stood with us. Donald Trump stands against everything we stand for as a union, as a society.
Biden has already pocketed endorsements from most of the nation's major labor unions, but the seal of approval from the auto workers has taken much longer, despite a full-court press that included Biden joining striking workers when they targeted the Detroit 3 automakers in September, ultimately leading to record-setting contracts for auto workers.
I was so damn proud to stand in that picket line with you.
That was the first time in history that a president has ever done that.
Trevor Honeycutt is a White House reporter for Reuters.
The UAW endorsement is really huge for Biden. So you have a lot of auto workers in critical swing states that the campaign really needs to win, including especially Michigan, and to kind of pull back some of these blue-collar workers who have moved over to Trump in recent years. So they think that's really important in some of those key states.
The previous administration was content to sit in the sidelines and let China take all these jobs. I won't let that happen.
Biden vowed to push back against the outflow of manufacturing jobs to China and touted the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, which is offering incentives to automakers and others to manufacture in the U.S. Biden narrowly won the auto industry hub of Michigan in 2020, and he now has his sights set on a rematch between himself and Trump, who has had decisive victories in the first two Republican presidential contests, in Iowa and New Hampshire.
We want to go back to that meeting of the UAW because it is official now. The president of the UAW, Shawn Fain, saying the UAW is endorsing Joe Biden as president of the United States. You'll remember he actually joined auto workers in a first ever for a president on the picket lines in Wayne County, Michigan. In addition to that, 380,000 members represented there at this meeting. Powerful voting bloc in some key states, Michigan, Wisconsin, battleground states, but also people who can man phones and go door to door. And Shawn Fain took an opportunity to really go after Donald Trump. He said Donald Trump is a scab, a billionaire, and that's who he represents. He doesn't care about the American auto worker. Instead of trash talking about our union, Joe Biden stood with us. He said our endorsement must be earned, and then just a couple of minutes ago, he gave the official UAW endorsement to Joe Biden. One more note, the folks there were shouting, Joe, Joe, Joe. This is very early. UAW usually waits a while, many months from now, before they would normally endorse. But as we've been saying, this is going to be a very, very long campaign.
Good morning. Today is Thursday, January 25th. I'm Corva Coleman from NPR News, and here are today's top stories. The state of Alabama is scheduled to execute Kenneth Eugene Smith today for the murder of Elizabeth Sennett in 1988. She was stabbed and beaten to death in her home in a murder-for-hire plot. Anti-death penalty protesters have rallied against Alabama's plan to use an untested method to put Smith to death using nitrogen gas. The Gulf States Newsroom's Joseph King reports some capital punishment opponents have a personal connection to the effects of death row.
About a dozen people gathered in the basement of a church in Birmingham the night before the state plans to execute Kenneth Eugene Smith, including Chris Brown, whose father sat on death row in Alabama for almost 17 years before he was executed in 2003.
So I grew up with him on death row, and after his execution, I stayed as active as I could in the movement.
Brown says the group hopes to reach their friends and neighbors with their message that the death penalty is barbaric, especially with Alabama's plan to suffocate Smith.
For me, as a Christian, I believe that all life is precious.
Brown says he doesn't trust the state, especially after its botched attempt to execute Smith in 2022. For NPR News, I'm Joseph King.
Flood warnings are posted across much of the South today. That follows yesterday's flash flood warnings in parts of Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Separately, there are numerous dense fog advisories this morning. These stretch from North Dakota south to the Florida Panhandle. The United Auto Workers Union has endorsed President Biden for re-election. Biden has claimed he's a strong pro-union president, and during UAW strikes last fall, he joined a picket line near Detroit. UAW President Shawn Fain says there was a clear choice for the union.
We need to know who's going to sit in the most powerful seat in the world and help us win as a united working class. So if our endorsements must be earned, Joe Biden has earned it.
The UAW leader dismissed Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump as a, quote, scab. The Federal Trade Commission's Office of Technology is hosting a virtual summit today. They'll discuss key developments in artificial intelligence. From member station KQED, Rachel Myro has more.
Speakers are expected to include FTC Chair Lina Khan, academics, entrepreneurs, and science fiction author and journalist Cory Doctorow. The federal agency says it acknowledges that large language models and generative AI are already changing the way we work, and is citing concerns that AI may turbocharge fraud and that companies may use anti-competitive tactics to lock in market dominance. The event is online and open to the public. For NPR News, I'm Rachel Myro.
This is NPR.
So following the primary results out of Iowa and New Hampshire, President Biden is now treating Donald Trump as the Republican nominee. The president just received the endorsement of one of the largest labor unions in the country, the United Auto Workers. As Nancy Cordes reports, UAW President Shawn Fain, who led a historic strike against the big three automakers last fall, denounced the former president.
Donald Trump is a scam.
The president of the United Auto Workers didn't just endorse President Biden Wednesday. He also slammed Mr. Biden's opponent for a history of what he described as anti-union policies.
Donald Trump is a billionaire, and that's who he represents.
President Biden had been courting the UAW and its 400,000 members for some time. Last year, he joined striking workers on the picket line, first sitting president to do so.
Built the middle class.
The endorsement could give Mr. Biden a boost in the swing state of Michigan, the heart of the U.S. auto industry. Nationwide, 20% of voters in 2020 said someone in their household belonged to a labor union. 56% of them went for President Biden, 40% for Trump.
God bless the American worker. Thank you, thank you.
Today, Mr. Biden will travel to another swing state, Wisconsin, to unveil another $5 billion worth of transportation projects stemming from the infrastructure law he passed in 2022. The latest outlays include $1 billion to replace the aging Blatnick Bridge connecting Duluth and Superior, Wisconsin, $600 million to replace the I-5 bridge connecting Vancouver, Washington to Portland, Oregon, and $300 million to build a new container terminal in the port of New Orleans, Louisiana.
Reporting on the Biden team's intention to make abortion rights a central theme of this campaign. And we got more evidence yesterday when the White House announced that Kate Cox, the Texas woman whose fight to terminate a non-viable pregnancy became national news, she was invited by the First Lady to sit with her at the State of the Union in March, Anne-Marie.
Very interesting. And so is the infrastructure stuff, except we know that sometimes the president doesn't always get credit for all that infrastructure investment when a bridge isn't going to be built for another 7 years or whatever. But let us talk about the results of the last two primaries in New Hampshire and Iowa. Increasingly, it looks like Donald Trump is going to be the nominee, and the president is sort of getting himself ready for a rematch. But the American people don't want to see that. There's a poll after poll after poll indicates that a rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump is the last thing Americans want. So my question to you is there a concern within the White House, within the Biden campaign, about a general lack of enthusiasm, especially among those crucial undecided voters?
So I think the next couple of weeks, Anne-Marie, are going to be a test, because what they have been arguing to us for the past several months, when we see polls like that showing that Americans aren't excited about a rematch between Biden and Trump, they continuously say, our voters are going to get more excited. It's just that they're not checked in yet. There isn't truly a Democratic primary. Joe Biden is going to be the nominee, so they're not really paying attention. They haven't really focused on the fact that Donald Trump, who they came out in droves to defeat in 2020, is going to be the nominee again again this time around. And as soon as our voters are dialed in, they are going to get more enthusiastic. So now we'll see. Certainly the campaign is trying to get them enthusiastic by holding big campaign rallies about an issue they really care about, abortion rights, by traveling to swing states like Wisconsin today to sort of wave the flag and say, hey, look at all this infrastructure spending that you wanted that we are now doing. And so we'll see, as polls come out over the next few weeks, whether it has made a difference, especially now that Donald Trump is winning some big primaries, and whether those Biden voters truly are waking up and saying, oh boy, we need to get revved up to defeat him again.
Yeah, we will see. Nancy, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Donald Trump is a scab. Donald Trump is a billionaire, and that's who he represents. If Donald Trump ever worked in an auto plant, he wouldn't be a UAW member. He'd be a company man trying to squeeze the American worker. Donald Trump stands against everything we stand for as a union, as a society. When you go back to our core issues, wages, retirement, health care, and our time, that's what this election's about. This election's about who will stand up with us and who will stand in our way. Those are the questions that will win or lose this election and will decide our fate. Those are the questions that will determine the future of our country and the fate of the working class. When I first came into office, we made some headlines by saying that our endorsements would be earned, not freely given. We've said we'd stand with whoever stood with us in our fight. Not because somebody was nice to us and we want to be nice to them, but because we need to know who's going to put up and who's going to shut up. And going even further, we need to know who's going to stand up with us. And this choice is clear. Joe Biden bet on the American worker, while Donald Trump blamed the American worker. We need to know who's going to sit in the most powerful seat in the world and help us win as a united working class. So if our endorsements must be earned, Joe Biden has earned it.